Why debt collection feels intimidating even when it is routine. Debt collection is one of the most misunderstood parts of the U.S. consumer system. For many people, the phrase itself triggers anxiety, even when nothing extreme has actually happened yet. This reaction usually comes from uncertainty rather than experience. Most consumers are never taught how debt collection actually works, so they fill the gaps with assumptions, stories, and worst-case scenarios. Debt collection is often imagined as a sudden loss of control. People picture aggressive phone calls, threats, or immediate legal consequences. In reality, debt collection is a process, not a single event. It unfolds in stages, often slowly, and most accounts follow a fairly predictable path. Another reason debt collection feels overwhelming is timing. People usually learn about it only after a problem has already developed. By then, emotions are high, stress is present, and it becomes harder to absorb clear explanations. Understanding the system earlier before it escalates makes it feel far less intimidating. This video explains how debt collection typically works in the United States, step by step, starting from the first missed payment. It focuses on what usually happens for everyday consumers, not extreme or rare outcomes. The goal is clarity, not fear. This explanation is for general educational purposes only and does not provide legal advice. What debt collection actually is, and what it is not. Debt collection is not a punishment, and it is not a judgment about someone's character. At its core, debt collection is simply the process of trying to recover money that was not paid according to the original agreement. That agreement could involve a credit card, a loan, a medical bill, or another type of reported debt. Debt collection does not begin the moment a payment is missed. In most cases, it begins only after a period of delinquency. Before that, the account is usually handled by the original company that issued the bill or loan. Another common misunderstanding is that debt collection always involves third-party agencies. In reality, many collection efforts are handled internally by the original creditor for months before any outside company becomes involved. Debt collection also does not automatically mean lawsuits, wage garnishment, or asset seizure. Those outcomes are separate processes that occur only under specific conditions and timelines. Most collection activity never reaches that stage. Understanding what debt collection is helps strip away the emotional weight that often surrounds it. It is a system designed to manage unpaid accounts, not a personal confrontation. Step 1. The first missed payment. The debt collection process usually begins quietly with a missed payment. This could happen for many reasons, such as an oversight, a temporary cash flow issue, or an unexpected expense. At this stage, the account is considered late, but it is not yet in collections. Most creditors allow a short grace period. If the payment is made during this time, the account may return to normal without any lasting record. Even after the grace period, the account is often simply marked as past due rather than escalated. This early stage is often overlooked because it does not feel serious. There may be reminder emails, notices on statements, or automated messages. These communications are part of standard account management, not debt collection. At this point, the account is still entirely with the original creditor. No outside parties are involved, and no formal collection activity has started. Step 2. Delinquency and internal collections. If a missed payment is not resolved, the account may move into delinquency. Delinquency simply means the account is past due beyond the initial grace period. It does not automatically mean the debt has been sent to collections. During this stage, many companies begin internal collection efforts. These efforts are usually handled by a separate department within the same organization. The tone may become firmer, but the account has not yet left the original creditor. Internal collection activity often includes reminder letters, emails, and phone calls. These communications are meant to prompt payment or discussion. They are usually scripted and follow company policy rather than individual discretion. It is important to understand that internal collections are still part of the original relationship. The original creditor still owns the debt, and the account has not been transferred or sold. Many debts are resolved at this stage. Payments may be made, plans may be arranged, or balances may be brought current. When that happens, the process stops here. Step 3. When accounts become seriously past due. If delinquency continues for several months, the account may be classified as seriously past due. The exact timing varies depending on the type of debt and the creditor's policies, but this stage often begins after multiple missed payments. At this point, the creditor may limit account privileges. For example, a credit card may be frozen or closed. This does not remove the obligation, but it signals that the account is no longer considered active in good standing. Communications may increase in frequency. The language may reference potential next steps, such as account closure or transfer. However, even at this stage, the account is often still with the original creditor. Many consumers assume that once an account reaches this point, collections are inevitable. In reality, there is still a window where resolution can occur internally. Step 4. The decision to escalate an account. Eventually, the creditor may decide that internal efforts are no longer effective. At this point, the account may be escalated. This decision is usually based on time, balance size, and internal policies, not personal judgments. Escalation does not happen overnight. It follows predefined timelines. For some debts, this can take several months. For others, it may take longer. When escalation occurs, the creditor generally has two main options. The account may be assigned to a collection agency, or it may be sold to another company. These paths look similar to consumers, but are not the same. The choice depends on the creditor's strategy and the type of debt involved. The important point is that escalation is a structured decision, not a sudden reaction. What it means when a debt is assigned for collection. When a debt is assigned to a collection agency, the original creditor still owns the debt. The agency is acting on the creditor's behalf to attempt recovery. In this arrangement, the collection agency contacts the consumer, but the underlying account remains tied to the original creditor. Payments may still be credited to the original account. Assignment does not erase the original history. It adds a new layer of activity to the process. This is often when consumers first hear the term collections, even though the debt itself has existed for some time. Why the process feels sudden to consumers. Many people feel blindsided when debt collection begins. This usually happens because the earlier stages were quiet or ignored. Bills may have gone unopened, emails filtered out, or calls unanswered. By the time a collection agency contacts someone, months may have passed since the original missed payment. From the consumer's perspective, it feels sudden. From the system's perspective, it is the result of a long sequence of steps. Understanding this timeline helps reframe the experience. Collection activity is not the beginning of the story. It is the later part of a process that started much earlier. Common misunderstandings at this stage. One common misunderstanding is believing that debt collection immediately damages credit. In reality, reporting depends on timing and reporting practices. Another misunderstanding is assuming that collectors have unlimited authority, which is not the case. Many consumers also believe that ignoring the process makes it go away. In most cases, ignoring communication simply allows the process to continue without input. Clarifying these misunderstandings early helps consumers approach the situation more calmly and realistically. What changes when a third-party collector gets involved? When a third-party collection agency becomes involved, many consumers assume the situation has dramatically worsened. In reality, this stage represents a change in who is communicating, not necessarily a change in the debt itself. At this point, the original creditor has either assigned the debt to an outside agency or sold it. From the consumer's perspective, both situations feel similar because communication now comes from a different company. However, the underlying obligation still traces back to the original account. Third-party collectors operate under structured procedures. They rely on standardized scripts, timelines, and reporting systems. Individual collectors usually do not make discretionary decisions about outcomes. Their role is to attempt contact and seek resolution according to the parameters they were given. This is often the stage where consumers feel the most pressure, not because the process is inherently harsher, but because the communication becomes more formal and persistent. Understanding that this stage follows defined rules helps reduce the sense of unpredictability. How and when collection activity affects credit reports. One of the most common questions consumers have is when debt collection activity appears on a credit report. The answer depends on timing and reporting practices rather than on the moment a collector makes contact. A debt does not usually appear on a credit report as a collection immediately after a missed payment. There is often a significant delay between the original delinquency and the appearance of a collection entry. This delay exists because accounts must reach certain thresholds before they are reported as collections. When a collection entry does appear, it is typically reported separately from the original account. This can make the report look more severe than the situation feels internally. In reality, it reflects how the reporting system categorizes unresolved obligations. It is important to understand that contact from a collector and credit reporting are related but separate processes. A consumer may hear from a collector before seeing any change on their credit report, or they may notice a report entry before direct contact occurs. This separation is one reason collection activity often feels confusing. Different systems move on different timelines. What collectors can and cannot do in practice. Many fears around debt collection come from assumptions about collector authority. While this video does not provide legal advice, it is helpful to understand the general structure of how collectors operate. Collectors are not courts, They do not issue judgments, decide penalties, or enforce outcomes on their own. Their role is to communicate and attempt recovery within defined boundaries. In practice, most collection activity involves communication. Phone calls, letters, and notices are the primary tools used. These communications are typically logged and monitored internally. Collectors do not decide whether someone's wages are affected or whether assets are taken. Those outcomes, when they occur, involve separate processes and timelines beyond routine collection activity. Understanding this distinction helps reduce the sense that collectors have immediate control over a consumer's life. Their role is narrower than many people assume. Why ignoring collectors rarely stops the process. A common response to collection activity is avoidance. Many people stop answering calls or opening letters because the experience feels stressful. While this reaction is understandable, it usually does not stop the process. Collection systems are designed to continue attempts at contact according to schedules. When there is no response, the system simply moves forward without consumer input. This can limit options rather than preserve them. Ignoring communication does not make a debt disappear. It also does not provide context or clarification that might otherwise shape how the account is handled. This does not mean consumers must engage immediately or emotionally. It means that silence is interpreted as lack of resolution, not as closure. Common ways debt collection actually ends. Despite how intense the experience can feel, most debt collection situations resolve in ordinary ways. Very few follow extreme paths. One common outcome is payment or partial payment. This may occur through a lump sum, a series of payments, or another agreed arrangement. When payment occurs, the account status updates accordingly. Another outcome is time-based resolution. Over long periods, accounts may become inactive or less actively pursued. This does not happen quickly, and it varies by situation, but it is part of how the system functions. Some debts are resolved through administrative processes rather than direct interaction. These outcomes are governed by policies rather than personal decisions. The key point is that resolution usually happens quietly rather than dramatically. Why debt collection feels personal even when it is systemic. Debt collection communications often feel personal because they are directed at individuals. However, the process itself is largely automated and policy-driven. Collectors follow scripts. Letters follow templates. Timelines are set by systems. The experience feels targeted, but the process is standardized. Understanding this helps separate emotional reactions from structural reality. The system responds to account status, not to personal narratives. How time changes the debt collection experience. Time plays a significant role in how debt collection unfolds. As time passes, priorities shift, systems update, and the intensity of activity may change. Older accounts are treated differently from newer ones. Recent activity tends to receive more attention, while older, unresolved accounts often move into different administrative categories. This gradual change is part of why debt collection rarely looks the same from beginning to end. The experience evolves over months and years. Putting debt collection into a bigger picture. Debt collection is one component of a broader consumer credit system. It exists to manage unpaid obligations, not to define individuals. Many people experience debt collection at some point in their lives and later move on without lasting consequences. The system allows for recovery, change, and improvement over time. Viewing debt collection as a process rather than a crisis helps reduce fear and allows for clearer thinking. Final calm summary and takeaways. Debt collection does not begin suddenly. It follows a sequence that starts with a missed payment and unfolds over time. Third-party collectors represent a change in communication, not an automatic escalation to extreme outcomes. Credit reporting, collection activity, and resolution paths operate on separate timelines, which is why the process often feels confusing. Understanding how the system usually works replaces fear with clarity. American Rights Guide exists to explain everyday U.S. systems in plain English without fear, hype, or politics. If this explanation helped you understand how debt collection actually works, consider subscribing for more calm, educational breakdowns of consumer rights and everyday systems.